in the country in terms of police work and school prevention. We also have Dave Bradley at the back of the room. Dave Bradley is the hall monitor at Earl Haig. Dave Bradley does phenomenal work every day, and I just want to briefly talk about Dave and what he does. Dave, as you all know, the College of Teachers has an advisory saying teachers should not be friends with students using on social media. Dave is an exception. Dave's got how many? 3,000 friends on Facebook, and Dave has been phenomenally successful, extraordinarily successful in intervening early on, preventing incidences, getting involved with students in terms of solving incidences. He has great relationships with the students at his school. I actually am an Earl Haig alumni. I read all of Dave's Facebook comments and see his pictures in terms of the great things going on at Earl Haig. But he's got a phenomenal relationship. And one of my points is that although the College of Teachers has clearly said that we should not have our teachers on Facebook and using social media, this is a phenomenally effective tool. And if you have people like Dave Bradley and others, perhaps social workers, hall monitors, guidance counselors who are specially trained, we can have a carve-out of individuals who befriend students and can develop these relationships. And it's going to be a phenomenally effective tool for crime prevention and for school safety. So we need more Dave Bradleys. I'm not saying that all teachers should be friends with students on Facebook, because I don't think that's going to be a good idea, and I think the College of Teachers and the unions agree with that, but there should be more Dave Bradleys who have the expertise and those personal skills to befriend students and to work with them, and it's a phenomenally effective tool. Cyberbullying. So cyberbullying has been defined, and this is the definition used by the Ontario Ministry of Education. It occurs through the use of information and communication technologies. It includes spreading rumors or hurtful images or comments by means of email or text messaging on social media or personal websites. So cyberbullying is a phenomenon we're seeing more and more of all across Canada. And this is the definition of bullying, and this is the official Ontario government definition that comes out of PPM 144. It's a form of repeated, persistent, aggressive behavior directed at an individual or individuals that is intended to cause distress or harm to another person's body, feelings, self-esteem, or reputation. So keep in mind, in general, bullying is persistent. It is repetitive. It is aggressive. You generally don't have one incident of bullying. It's something that's repeated. And generally, we find that bullying occurs where there is a real or perceived power imbalance. And bullying has become a huge phenomenon, and it particularly has become a phenomenon among girls, but also obviously boys. And particularly recently, the homophobic bullying is become hugely problematic and somewhat relentless. Sexting. Those of you who don't receive our BLG newsletter, the current issue is on sexting. I'm happy to share it with you. Just flip me an email. Sexting is the practice of sending or posting sexually suggestive text messages and images, including nude or semi-nude photographs via cell phone or over the internet. Sexting has become a huge problem in Canada. I recently had a major sexting case in New Brunswick where a young girl was courting a young man, and they were in a relationship, and she sent him her nude photo. He put it on a cell phone, and he would use his cell phone to demonstrate the sexual nature of the relationship. He would show it to his friends and say, look, this is, I'm really, I'm doing quite well here. And then of course they broke up, and he took that image and sent it to a friend who sent it to the entire world. Every single student at the school had this girl's nude image, nude picture on their cell phone. And they were fraught with anxiety and distress. And the reality is, what are you thinking? What were you thinking when you sent this picture? And this has become a phenomenon. 19% of teens between the ages of 13 and 19 have sent or posted nude or semi-nude photos of themselves. 22% of teen girls that reported sexting, of 22% that reported sexting, 11% of these girls were between the ages of 13 and 16. So we're talking about young girls in your school. And we have to educate them to say, look, if you send these photos, you lose control over them. And if you send the photos, just assume they're going to go viral. You cannot control how they're going to be used. We need to help these young girls manage their electronic reputations. 25% of teens said that they'd seen nude or semi-nude photos that were not intended to be shared. So this, again, has become a significant phenomenon that we need to educate our students about. And in terms of sexting, you all are aware that under the criminal code, it's not illegal for two teenagers under 18 to carry photos of one another. It's not illegal. It is illegal to distribute them. So the person distributing the photos could, in fact, be charged with child pornography. The charge is against the individual, the minor who distributes the photo, not the minor who created it. I'm not aware of these charges being laid in Canada. They certainly have been laid in the US. And of course, it's a shock to that whole school community when kids get charged with distributing child pornography. You all are outstanding, amazing educators who do great things in our schools. And as educators, you have a duty of care towards your students. So overall, you have a standard of care. You have to act as reasonably careful or prudent parents. And this includes to protect your students, our children, from any reasonably foreseeable risks of harm. So we have this overriding obligation. And I put to you that social media can be a very effective way for us to understand what's going on. We can use it as a positive tool and a preventative tool to understand what's happening in our schools. And now, so the big issue is, to what extent does the school play a role? And as you all know, under Bill 212, February 1st, 2008, the Ontario government amended the Education Act, and they added a section that says that a principal shall consider whether to suspend if he or she believes that the student has been engaged in any of the following activities while at school, or it's a school-related activity, and then the one that we need to focus in on is other circumstances where engaging in the activity will have an impact on the school climate. And that's the key word. If you're off school property, you're cyberbullying, you're making derogatory, offensive, personal, inflammatory comments online, homophobic comments, racist comments, sexual comments, and it has an impact on the school climate, then we as a school do have the ability at law to take disciplinary action. So this is a new change to the Education Act, and this is the model of when I spoke to the government of Nova Scotia about changing their Education Act. I used the Ontario language as a model. School climate is defined in PPM 145. It's a very broad definition that's hard to really understand. It's defined as the sum total of all personal relationships within the school. And it does say that, of course, when these relationships are founded on mutual acceptance and inclusion, a culture of respect becomes the norm. So we have to look at the case law to assess how this is to be applied, and when there is a link or nexus to your school, and when you can take disciplinary action. And so each case is going to be different, and it's going to be based on its own facts to the extent of, does this really impact the school climate, and to what extent, and how? So some of the things that we look at in terms of a framework, are students afraid to come to school? At that Birchmount Park case, I don't know, Tony was involved in that case. Students actually were afraid to come to school. The vice principal wanted to take medical leave. I don't know if you remember this, but in fact that weekend at Birchmount Park there were 11 windows broken at the school. So that clearly had an impact on families, and students were worried about reprisal or retaliation. So that's another issue. If students are afraid, if parents are complaining about disruption to the school environment, if school staff are worried about their own physical and emotional well-being, if school staff are worried about their own safety, those would be indices around events having an impact on the school climate, and where you can say, look, we need to take action here because the school climate is being affected. So these are some of the questions you should ask yourself where you have off-school conduct, and every case is going to be looked at differently based on the individual facts. Is there a direct or causal link between the student's conduct and the impact on the school climate? Does the conduct create a material or substantial disruption to the school? Does the conduct create a poisonous environment within the school? Students can't learn if they're being threatened and intimidated. And we do have this situation where parents come to school and say, look, Peter and Paul were walking home, and one's a Montreal Canadiens fans and one's a Leaf fan, and they got into what we call a consensual fight. And they're both 15, they're both the same size, and they come to school and they say, well, we want him to be suspended. And you may say, this isn't an issue that's had an impact on the school climate. This is an impact that impacts on us. This is an off-school event. So every case is going to be different, and it's one of those cases the educators will have to look at all the facts and make a determination. This is the leading case in Canada on that test. It's called RT versus Durham Catholic. It was released November 21st, 2008 by the Child and Family Services Review Board. I think you'll agree with me that it's a fairly clear-cut case in terms of the facts, but we'll talk about it. RT was the mother of a student named VK, again, female student, online, 13 years old, grade 8, and in January 2008 on Facebook, there were a number of comments made by a number of grade 8 students online, including the student named VK. And VK targeted a particular victim, and she wrote this email, this comment she posted on Facebook to the victim: you don't want me to get mad, or because I'll kill you right in your sleep, or school on Monday. I'm going to come to school on Monday and kick your ass. I'm going to kill you. Okay, okay. And so obviously the victim was extraordinarily upset about this. This was effectively a death threat online. The victim's father informed the vice principal. He said he was concerned about his daughter's safety at the school. The victim's father went to the police, and good for him. That was the right thing to do. He was uttering a death threat. This is a violation of the criminal code. And he also went to Facebook, and that's also a good thing. He went to the internet service, provider, went to Facebook and said, this is totally unacceptable. Facebook did close down VK's account, and she kept opening it. And Facebook actually ended up closing VK's account 3 times, which really showed a kind of malicious intent, which she continued to reopen. The victim had trouble sleeping. The victim felt isolated. The victim was afraid for her own personal safety, and she was afraid for the safety of her family. The victim would come home and she would close her blinds. She was always watching over her shoulder, and it even had an impact on the victim's sister, who also felt threatened and worried about the incident and about her own personal safety. So the principal recommended that this perpetrator, VK, be expelled from all schools of the board. It went to a hearing, and the school board's expulsion committee heard the submissions from the parents and only expelled VK from her school only, which I think in any situation would be seen as more than fair, or at least, this VK, I think, probably needs to go to a special expelled students program and needs special support. But nevertheless, that was the decision. VK's parents weren't happy with that, and they went to the Child and Family Services Review Board and said, you have no right to expel our student. All of these comments were made at home, and it didn't involve the school, and you have no right. And so the issue before the tribunal was, did this impact on the school climate? And the review board said, yes, it did. So this is the key case that talks about these are the indices where there was a clear link or nexus to the school, and there was a clear impact on the school climate. And the tribunal said that VK used Facebook to send emails, to impersonate some students, to make death threats, and the actions of the student were extremely serious, and it would be impossible for the student to return home. And so they said, the tribunal said, the climate of the school would be seriously affected by, and was seriously affected by by these comments. And the tribunal said, and I quote, the fear of significant harm generated by the Facebook communication and the subsequent knowledge that this was committed by one of the students of the school leads the board to find that the school climate was negatively impacted. And they also found out they also concluded that VK had the ability to control her behavior, and because she kept reopening these accounts, this was clearly planned and organized and thought through, and she was able to control her behavior. Now I want to briefly talk about two cases, very recent cases. You can see this was August 2011. Both of these cases are about freedom of expression. And I want to make this point that we have something in our charter called Section 2B. And Section 2B, it gives people the right to express themselves. So students are constantly saying to us, well, we have our charter rights. And what the courts have said are, there's protected speech and there's unprotected speech. And when you have speech that is hateful, speech that is sexual, speech that is homophobic, speech that is clearly racist, then that speech is likely going to be not protected. But if you have comments where someone's being sarcastic or critical, then of course the courts are going to say, you know, you've got to give students leeway. They do and say dumb things. So here you have a case called TV versus, and TV is the name of a student, Smith Green Community School. And here we have these two students that were entering grade 10. They both play on the volleyball team. They're in a public high school of 400 students, and they're going up for the tryouts of the volleyball team, and before the tryouts, they go to a friend's house for a sleepover, and they take these raunchy photos. And here we have girls kind of having fun at someone's house, and they're taking these raunchy photos of themselves in underwear, and they're using phallic-shaped lollipops. And it's kind of raunchy. They're not pornographic. They're not, you know, they're kind of, the word that the judge uses is raunchy. And the student, of course, posted these photos of herself and her friends on her Facebook account. And so a parent saw this in 2009, brought it to the superintendent, was aghast, saying, I'm really pissed off. These are the girls from our volleyball team, and they're putting these raunchy photos online, and this is inappropriate, and we want this child suspended, and they should be disciplined. And there was a split among the volleyball team, and some girls thought it was fine, and they were just expressing themselves, and other girls thought they were causing a disruption to the school. And the superintendent, who's this heavy-handed fellow, said, this is causing a disruption to extracurricular activities. So the long and the short of it was, the girls apologized. The girls made 3 visits to a counselor. They ended up missing 6 volleyball games and missing 5 games. And the whole issue is the girls took the school board to court and said, I've got First Amendment rights. I've got rights to express ourselves. And was this protected speech? Was this conduct protected by the students' First Amendment rights? And in this case, the court said, yes, that this doesn't go beyond the line, the court said, that the protection of First Amendment is not limited to written or spoken words, but includes other mediums or expression. And the court said that these photos don't constitute child pornography or obscenity under the Supreme Court's criteria. So the court said, you know, give students a leeway, and this doesn't go beyond, and this didn't create a substantial disruption to the school, the court said. Now, and now in Canada, this is the recent case. This is called Priggen versus University of Calgary. This just came out October 2010, and you had twin brothers. Both were full-time students enrolled at the University of Calgary, and they were taught by this professor named Professor Arun Mitra. And what was happening is students went online, and they said, I no longer fear hell. I took a course with Antra Mitra. And each of the brothers posted a message about Professor Mitra on the page, and Professor Mitra complained about the wall to the dean, and Peter, obviously a teacher was not happy. And the dean invited 10 students who posted the material on the wall to attend a meeting. And the 10 students, and what happened in the case was these brothers were placed on probation. And one for 6 months, one for 4 months. And it wasn't clear how the review committee had reached their decisions, but they were making these kind of sarcastic comments about their teacher online. And so the issue was this protected speech? And in that case, they said yes. They said that the students, that expression is not a form of criticism of one's professor. It didn't restrict them to accomplish the objective in the learning environment, and that the students shouldn't be prevented from expressing critical opinions. So they basically said that is accepted speech. Now, and one last case is a law student from the University of Western Ontario. This, again, decision was released December 2010. It goes the other way, where you have this student making threatening comments about other students, and his conduct was gruesome, frightening, graphic. It included inappropriate references to other students. He was making comments online about suicide bombings, watching videos in the classroom about terrorist activities, making personal comments about female students that were clearly derogatory. He had a Facebook site called Dr. Frankenstein and made all kinds of weird comments about doctor is eating babies, and talked about torture and talked about murder in the criminal law class, and he was suspended by the dean. And in that case, they said this was clearly not protected speech. They said there are limits to free speech, and these postings fell outside those limits. And making threats and defamation of one's character, they said, are not protected under the Charter. So I want to make this point that there are limits to what types of freedom, what types of speech are protected. So if you have incidences in your schools that cause material or substantial disruption to the school, that's something that's not protected. Hate language, racist or homophobic comments, not protected. Uttering threats or defamatory comments against individuals, other students, staff, not protected. Sexual comments that create a poisonous environment, sexual threats, intimidation, I don't think would be protected speech. So there's a line in the sand, and some teachers, kind of say, well, I'm pissed off at that. But being pissed off is not the test. The test are those comments creating a material or substantial disruption in the school? So, conducting an investigation, my advice to you, meet with the victim first of cyberbullying or sexting and get as much information as you can. Ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions. Were there any witnesses? What's the history? What's the background? Do you know who could have sent you these emails? What was the timing? We need copies of everything. Copies of all relevant emails, copies of chat line discussions, copies of the Facebook page. Download the stuff because otherwise it just may disappear. Was this an isolated incident or an ongoing incident? What's the time and date of the incident? Does the student have any fear about coming to school? Are there other victims? So these are the open-ended questions you need to ask as part of your investigation. And then you'll interview the other witnesses, and then interview potentially the alleged perpetrators if you can find out who they are. So this requires a lot of support, and it requires education of our student body. I know that many schools try to take the blocking route of blocking Facebook, blocking MySpace, blocking YouTube. Students can download anti-blocking software very quickly, and probably the better approach is teaching them good netiquette, good online conduct, being a responsible and civil and respectful online person, because that really is the solution, creating a culture of respect online rather than trying to block the stuff, because that's simply it's going to be a losing battle. Victims of cyberbullying should be encouraged, of course, not to reply to messages from cyberbullies. It's very difficult. Many of the victims do reply, and that just gets them into problems. Obviously, the message to victims should be, do not erase or delete the messages. We need you to download them and keep them. Make copies of all the messages. And this is a key one. And all of you saw last Saturday's Globe and Mail front page. Being a bystander. I can't emphasize this enough. Do not be a digital bystander. There's the bully or the perpetrator, who he plays a role, and he clearly needs help and assistance and support in terms of what's motivating him or her. You have the victim, of course, it's targeted, and they, of course, may feel attacked and isolated, and it's a terrible situation in terms of their identity and confidence. But there's also the bystander. And the point of that article was to say the bystander plays an incredibly important role in terms of supporting and empowering the bully and being there. And if the bystander withdraws the support, or if the bystander goes to Dave Bradley and reports the incident, if the bystander goes to a school administrator, that can have a huge impact. So we need to educate all those potential bystanders about character and doing the right thing and supporting the right thing and reporting students where they see things online. So the bystander plays a critical role. And if you know people are being hurt, then let them know that you support them. So we need to really do a lot of work around educating the bystander. As I said earlier, Toronto Police has done a phenomenal job on their Crime Stoppers program, and I strongly recommend you go online and learn about what they're doing, because students can use their BlackBerry online and they can report things anonymously, and it's a phenomenally effective tool that can be used by students to assist in terms of crime prevention and community safety. And of course, you're going to tell your students that if cyberbullying is threatening, change your email, change your username, change your phone number. Do not give it out to other students. File a complaint with the school. Tell your website or internet provider or your cell phone company. And where conduct is criminal, I would strongly recommend you contact the police and let them know and let them do an investigation. So our schools need to get informed, involved, active around social media. We need to educate our teachers about social media, obviously the student body. Think about assemblies, bringing in guys like Scott Mills, Dave Bradley, bringing in Deborah Peplar, bringing from York University, probably Canada's leading expert on bullying, bringing in Wendy Craig from Queen's University, another phenomenal expert on bullying and cyberbullying. And of course, a key part of this is parents, educating our parent community. They are members of your school community. They need to understand that they've got to take ownership. And if you look at the research from Faye Mishna, her research on cyberbullying shows that 91% of parents said that they know what their children are doing online. And when students were asked, how often do you tell your parents what's happening online? 8% of students said, I inform my parents. So parents are generally clued out what's going on online, and we need to educate them around social media and get them involved in their children's lives. And of course, in your individual boards, enlist your IT people, because they can be extremely helpful. All emails, as you know, have footprints. So lastly, I'm a bit over time. We need all of you to encourage our school administration and our senior schools teams to walk the walk in terms of we need positive, respectful online communication. I don't think the answer is to block or to filter sites. It may work in some schools, but the bigger picture is to teaching positive, respectful, responsible online conduct and establishing clear school-wide rules about a culture of respect. And educating our students that the use of social media is not private, but extraordinarily public. And letting people know that in sending an online message, the rule of thumb is nothing is private, and teaching students how to manage their electronic reputations. Now I know my time's almost up, but we have a few seconds for questions. Sir?
On the curriculum versus University of Calgary, you mentioned that the speech was protected under the charter because this was critical. And then later on you mentioned that this is something that were not protected. One of those was defamatory.
That's right.
What's the acid test between critical and defamatory?
Well, this is it. That's a great question. And every case is going to be different, but defamatory comments are ones that bring the reputation into disrepute, that defamatory comments are retort, it has to be public, so it has to be distributed. If I make a comment to you, it's not necessarily defamatory, but if I send it out in a newsletter, if I send it on emails that is threatening, or it says that you're involved in child abuse, or it impacts your reputation in a public way, then that would be defamatory. So each case is going to be different. You have to look at the context. So that's why these cases are all fact-based. But clearly defamatory comments are defined as where an individual's reputation is being brought into disrepute or being tarnished in a public way.
Is it like slander where if it's true, then...
That's right. So there's 3 defenses. Good for you. So there's 3 defenses to the defamation. One of them is the truth. A second defense is where it's a matter of public interest. So if you're Christy Blatchford's doing a column and it's published nationally and it's a matter of public interest, that would be a defense. But the most common defense used is the third defense, which is called qualified privilege. And that's the defense that parents use. And parents say, because I have a special relationship to the school, and because I'm a parent at the school, that I can make critical comments about school personnel. And the courts have said, yes, you can make critical comments, but they can't be malicious, and they can't be vindictive, and they can't be knowingly false. So again, there are 3 defenses, and it ends up being a fact-based analysis. Awesome question. Sir?
In terms of those cases, how important is age as an mitigating factor as people are making the comments? Use examples of university settings. Can you imagine that the courts may do it differently if it's a high school student or an elementary student?
Definitely, and that's a great question. And the reason I have university students is because those are the only cases that are reported, and they're recent. There are no high school student cases what we have that are in Canada. I'm sure there are tons in the U.S. And the answer is yes. Obviously, age would be a factor. If you have an elementary student making comments, particularly an elementary student that's identified, then that would be a factor. The student at Birchmount Park that made those comments about the vice principal, that she's a fat penguin, he was identified. He was LD, and that was a factor in his discipline, that he was not actually expelled, but he was suspended because those factors were mitigated because he was identified and his age, he was 16. So all those things are looked at, and I think age, student history, identification are all clear factors we have to look at. Did the student understand what they were doing? Was that foreseeable? Those are key factors. So excellent point. Madam?
I'm just wondering, but we have a mom figure about teacher. So the students in the teacher's class, but the mom went and posted on Facebook terrible things about the teacher to other parents in that sort of headspace as her. So then there's issues happening at the school around the teacher teaching the student who didn't do anything, but the mother's doing something. Have you had cases about
Well, absolutely. So and then we have that all the time, where the mother's actually going on Facebook and making threats on Facebook. Now, my take on that is, look at the Ontario Schools Code of Conduct, roles of parents. There's a whole roles and responsibilities of parents. And I would say, as a mother, you are a member of our school community. As a mother, we have expectations around your conduct. And I would send her a letter saying that this is having an impact on the school climate. We'd like you to cease and desist. If it persists, your only recourse is to bar her from school property, is to effectively trespass her. Or you can use the Section 305 section of the Education Act to deny her access to school property. That would be a last step, but I would write her a letter saying that this is having an impact on the school climate, you're a member of the school community, there's expectations around your role, and we would ask you to stop those kinds of comments.
So she doesn't come on the school property anyways, but continues to do the stuff from home.
Right. And at some point, there's very little you can do. If the comments are threatening, then you call the police.
He's an idiot. He doesn't know how to teach those.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a lot you can do. You can meet with her, caution her, ask her to stop. But at some point, she's a parent. You can't suspend her. You can't expel her. But you can ask her to please stop and work with her in a positive way. There are limits to what you can do. I hear what you're saying. I had a case last year of a parent who went online and was making critical comments about her daughter's friends, but we actually did threaten to bar her from coming to school and bar her from the graduation. And she then stopped immediately and apologized. And she actually pulled her Facebook account. She couldn't control herself. One last? Yep, go ahead.
So to that point that we just discussed, there is that fine line between what's appropriate feedback and what is true and what is not. And so in the case of parents making complaints about educators, I'm not seeing that fine line. We all have the right to express an
Well, no, but I would take the view that if, and it sounds like this parent at least is not, if the parent is making defamatory comments like this gentleman was referring to, if the parent is making comments that the teacher is involved in child abuse, that the principal is incompetent, that the principal is involved in theft of school funds, which I've had all of those recently, then those are defamatory comments being distributed to a group, and I would write her a letter saying, if these persist, we will have no choice but to take legal action against you. You are defaming either a student or you are defaming our school personnel, you are defaming the school administrator, and we cannot permit this.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
What if that teacher is ineffective?
Oh, you mean if it's true, you mean? Oh, well.
This is a reality. What is it?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at the facts. I know there's a line there in terms of what is and what is not defamation. But I don't have time to get into it. I just want to close.
As usual, Eric, you're too good.
I'm being
Too
told.
good.
So let me make this last point, and you guys have pulled my slide. And that is, walked out of the building. It was Winston Churchill who said, we make a living by what we get, we make a life by what we give. You guys give a huge amount every day. I want to commend Scott Mills from Toronto Police, he's a leading expert on social media. Dave Bradley here from Earl Hague, who's here, I think, for my presentation. Dave does amazing things every day at his school. He's a compassionate, caring, responsible, amazing guy who students look up to in terms of community safety and crime prevention. I want to thank you for all the stuff that you do every day in your schools. We make a life by what we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give, and you folks every day give huge things to ensure that our students are safe, secure, and protected in our schools. Thank you so much. Thank you.